Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Kajeology podcast. I am your host, Katie J, aka Cage, and today we have a very special, very magical being joining us on the podcast. We have my dear friend Angel. I originally met Angel at the coffee shop across the street from my house. She was introduced to me through a mutual friend. And then a few weeks later, I was hanging out with a different friend. I went to go hang out with him at his house, and there she was. She was his roommate. And I was like, wow, our paths have now crossed twice. We are meant to be in community with each other, and the rest is history. She helped me sell my van. She makes the most amazing desserts and has, oh my goodness, so much magic to share with the world. And I'm really excited to dive into that today with Angelia. Angel, welcome
I
to the
was,
show.
I was waiting for you to use that. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Would love for you to introduce yourself, you do in the world, like what your work is in the world. And yeah, anything that feels present will flow from there.
Thank you. I am excited to be here with you. Aloha to everyone listening. Yeah, me and Katie were just meant to be good friends, and I really appreciated having her friendship and her empowered energy around me. And I'm excited to be here today. And I love that you mentioned that I make amazing desserts. I just want everyone to know who's listening that Um, the type of dessert that I am famous for, I have spent 13 years mastering, and it's the art of gourmet raw plant-based desserts. So it's not your average dessert. They are just the fanciest, most bougie, like life-extending, delicious, nourishing desserts on the face of the planet. And they're one of my many passions.
Second that.
It's not one of my main things, but it's something that I love sharing with any community that I can because it is a new paradigm of food. And that's not even why we're connecting here today, but I just wanted to give a little bit more details about that. Probably won't ever have the opportunity to have that unless you're in my personal circle. Um, the main way that I'm feeling inspired to serve right now is to help whatever women in my community who are coded to work with me to really come into their personal power. So I have my own methods of doing it, but in essence, that's what my work does is it helps bring a woman into her power, into her feminine radiance, and helps activate her magic. Um, and my specific methodology, if you will, that I call shamanic menstruation, which I can't really like claim as a title because shamanic menstruation is it's ancient and it belongs to all women. Everyone who has a womb has access to this type of magic and um, this personal practice to really be initiated into your power in a way that nothing else can initiate you. So it's really the intelligence of the womb that's doing it. And I am a forerunner, if you will, bringing this ancient practice and wisdom back to modern day society and back into the laps of women. I will say that your womb is initiating you into your power, regardless of whether you work with me or not, or whether you have any idea of the fact that that's what it's doing. That is one of the main reasons why we have a menstrual cycle, especially on the spiritual side. It's not just to cleanse the body and the psyche and the womb and prepare you to give birth to a child. It's a deeply spiritual, ancient path of initiation. And this is, this is wisdom that almost got completely forgotten, through what I call the great slumber. which is who knows how many thousands of years collectively as a human species we have been asleep to who we are as divine beings. And this is an ancient way of living and being that, the priestesses were very adept in the temples back in the day before all of these patriarchal churches got placed on top of all the divine feminine priestess temples. And this is also wisdom that like all of the indigenous cultures always knew about. And I personally resonate really strongly with the way that the Native Americans taught this and how they honored women's power when it came to their menstrual cycle. So the Native Americans built moon lodges for the women because they understood that when a woman was menstruating, her psychic powers were at their peak, and the entire community relied on the women to give their full attention to the process taking place within them while they were bleeding, because they would receive very valuable insights, guidance, wisdom, visions that would benefit the entire tribe, if you will. So oftentimes the women would go, into kind of like a state of hibernation and deep introspection and like a meditative, very deeply restful state. It's called the sacred dreamer time for a reason. And when they would come out, the chiefs would be waiting for them to share what they received during that time. And oftentimes it would be, so valuable, they would be able to predict when a drought was going to come or when there were, enemies approaching, and they would give that information to the chief, the divine masculine leader of the tribe, and then he would take his, masculine action and move everyone into safety. And so this is really like the flag that I am flying right now, especially as we're moving through such pivotal, tumultuous times, moving through our collective dark night of the soul, when the feminine, the divine feminine, she has been rising on the planet for many years now. And now we're seeing the divine masculine rising, which is really beautiful and starting to mature out of our spiritual infancy. And this type of wisdom that women can access through their own innate oracular abilities is one of the most important things that the entire planet needs right now. And, we really need women to not only be tuned in and have access to this type of wisdom from their own channel, but also be strong enough in their own personal power that they can really trust this wisdom and understand the value and the dire need for it on earth, and courageously lead and step forward where we see that this type of wisdom and leadership is in need, because this this need for true embodied wisdom and leadership is like popping up left and right. I'm seeing every single day the drastic need for real, genuine leadership and embodied wisdom. And this path that I call shamanic menstruation is the path that nature created us in, like the embedded inside of our biology to bring us into our power, to bring us into our wisdom. And we've just been, we've been oppressed. And so women for thousands of years have been suppressing our own magic. We've been suppressing our own power and our own wisdom because we got killed for it once upon a time. And I just want to say that stepping into your power and your wisdom right now is one of the most courageous things that any woman can do, because there is such like a trauma and a stain left in the Akash from what has happened to humanity for being in their power. And this also goes for men too. Anybody who was a free thinker or who was trying to empower humanity in any way was killed for a really long time. So it's a big deal for us to be reclaiming this for ourselves. And I'm so passionate about reintroducing this wisdom and these practices to women because they have profoundly changed my life over many years. And I would not be the woman that I am today without these practices. So it was a very long-winded answer, but I'm going to stop there and throw the ball back to you.
I love it. I love it. I love your passion and the fullness of that answer because it is a fair like there were so many questions that I had coming up where I'm like, okay, I'm gonna ask her this, I'm gonna ask her this, and then you just answered it. And I was like, amazing. But I do have a question that I'm sure a lot of women are thinking right now, which is how do I reclaim my power? How do I reclaim my magic and my reconnect back to my intuition? And I love that you mentioned the priestess temples because this morning I actually pulled the high priestess card from my tarot deck.
Beautiful.
Yeah, so and it was all about reconnecting with and trusting the intuition. So, yeah, I'm curious, how might someone go about doing that?
That's a great question. And the answer is complex and very nuanced and very personal to each woman in her individual current incarnation, as well as um, the entire journey of her soul. There's a lot that goes into it. And I would say the very bottom line is that I know that life in and of itself is working to start initiating all of us into our power more right now. And for me personally, what this looked like was like accidentally starting to have more time freedom than I ever had before. Accidentally. Many years ago, probably back in like 2014, I think is when I really started being initiated onto this path. And for me, it was, I started getting time that I never had before. For the first time in my life, I was able to stay home during my bleed instead of having to slap a fake smile on and go out and serve the public. Because I have nearly 20 years experience in the food and beverage and service industries. I've bartended and served for a lot of my life. And to not have to override the wisdom of my body when it was screaming to stay home and rest was profound for me. I immediately started having the most cathartic emotional healing experiences while I would bleed. When I started staying home, I just like cracked open and would just weep from the pit of my soul for hours, not out of sadness, but out of relief and overwhelmed from feeling so much love pouring through me, so much healing pouring through me. I didn't even understand what was happening at first, and it took me many years of getting very protective of this time of month to really start to understand what I was uncovering and rediscovering within myself that eventually really developed into this full-on womb shaman path that I'm embodied in now. But I would say most women, from what I can see and what I have personally experienced, and most of humanity in general, we are so deeply conditioned to think that we don't have a choice, that we don't have power over our reality and what we experience and what happens to us. And most humanity, and especially women, really need to start figuring out how to choose themselves and stretch their capacity in their ability to start shifting their beliefs about what's possible for them. Because, this has been one of the most difficult things I've ever done in my entire life is reawakening and rediscovering these ancient practices and wisdom and fighting like hell for years and years to keep this sacred time for myself and not get completely sucked into the modern day slave matrix that we're all still very much a part of, that we inherited from our parents and they inherited from their parents, and like we're like so many generations into being slaves. Most of us don't even realize that we are, because we have no concept of what life would be like if we didn't have to work all of the time and had an unlimited amount of time to do whatever we wanted. Most of us haven't even opened our mind to that as a possible reality. And for me, it has been me being tested over and over and over again, with my ability to choose me against everything that was trying to take this sacred thing that was given to me, because it has been very difficult and it has challenged me beyond belief. But when I started experiencing this ancient remembrance, I was also like receiving instructions, if you will, as like a soldier for the divine feminine. I was receiving instructions that it was extremely important for me to safeguard this and protect it at all costs, because through me, it was going to be, the way was going to be made possible for other women. And so it has been my sacred duty and honor for the last decade to protect this time for myself and powerfully decide in a very determined way that this was returning for me and for all women. And I don't know how we're going to make this a reality, but I'm going to figure out how to make it a reality for myself and start empowering one woman at a time to figure out how to start reclaiming the sacred time for herself. Um, so that's the simplest answer that I can give, is it hugely, hugely comes down to figuring out how to say no
Mhm.
and start choosing you and saying yes to you. And that's scary as fuck sometimes.
Yeah.
And like really tests your nervous system, especially if you're, a survivor of a bunch of trauma like I am. Um, it's gonna really challenge you. But the more you get pushed on by the universe, the more opportunities you get presented to you to choose you, to tune into what's true for you, what's a yes in your body, and actually have the courage to stand up and use your voice and say no when it doesn't feel aligned and it's not actually going to serve your highest good, even if it's something as simple as, showing up for like a social gathering, but when you're actually not a yes, or when you're bleeding, for instance, it's like a huge, deep, long, winding path of remembering how to stand in your power, and life will help you. And that's the main key core thing that every single woman needs to figure out how to do if she wants to have this sacred time for herself. She's got to start remembering that she's worthy of it. And once you really start to taste the medicine of what this type of practice can give you, like I did, it will bring healing to the deepest part of your spirit. And that will show you how important it is to start prioritizing your own sacred self-care time until you actually experience the medicine and magic of it, like in your body, and you're on the floor weeping for hours because you're so overwhelmed with love. You probably won't quite get it. But once you feel that, it's profound. It's like having an ayahuasca experience. It's like sitting in, sacred ceremony with mushrooms or peyote. Like it's those levels of soul healing that radically change the way you show up in the world and the life that you attract for yourself, that really give you like the embodied experience and understanding of the value of protecting this time for yourself and figuring out how to reclaim it for yourself. So I just want to say that this is really deep and nuanced, and I could probably talk about this for hours. And this is the work that I'm doing. Um, but like bare minimum, it starts by actually knowing when you're bleeding, by like actually becoming cyclically aware, paying attention to your cycle, actually like looking at it as this like source of power for you and this sacred, incredible blessing that you have, no longer looking at it like a burden or loathing what your biology is, because the world is made for male biology and not feminine. But that's also like a huge piece of this work is like the structure of our society isn't just going to magically change to fit cyclical women. Like the way that that changes is by each woman individually reclaiming her cyclical nature and her genuine need for rest much more than men, and like not feeling guilty because she's not a fucking man and can't show up with the same level of energy and like like level-headedness every day, and like really understanding the fluctuations of your cycle and where you're at, and like the fact that when you're coming close to your bleed, your shadows and your wounds are coming to the surface. And if you don't have the ability to create more space for yourself, to hold space for yourself during that time, and you have to override the natural wisdom in your body that's telling you to like start spending more time alone. If you have to go to work, there's a good chance you're going to turn into a bitch
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
like society forces you to override the wisdom of your body. And so this is a really complicated thing. And this is literally the edge that all of us are being called to come into our power right now, because it's going to take every single one of us figuring out in our own unique ways how to start listening to the wisdom of our body more, how to start creating our life to be cyclical, and creating more structures of support and systems in our life to support our cyclical nature. Um, so I'm going to stop there because I could keep going, but that's another very long-winded answer.
And there's so many different directions that I want to take this in. What's coming up for me is because you mentioned how it's so important for us to be aware of when we bleed, what our cycle is. And there are so many women out there who feel like the only way they can take control of whether or not they're about to have a child is by being on birth control, by having an IUD, by whatever, all the things that disconnect them from their cycle, which
Hmm.
is not where this question is going, but I did want to acknowledge that I'm sure there are people out there listening who are like, oh, I don't even have a bleed. So
Mm,
I mean, maybe we should go there. So, like, what would you say to somebody
you
who
totally should.
is there? Yeah,
And I'm not going to fluff it for you. If you're on hormonal birth control, you are strangling the feminine spirit that lives within you. Period. I was on hormonal birth control for about a decade.
me too.
So I understand what it's like. And I will say that, there's certain levels of reality where it's seemingly appropriate, although I just can't even agree with that statement anymore. But like I'm grateful that I had it as an option, because that was a better option than having an unplanned pregnancy when I was, 20 years old. And I like intentionally stayed ignorant around what I was actually ingesting. I didn't read the side effects. I did not educate myself on what it was. I knew that it wasn't good for me, but I knew that it was the lesser of, two evils, if you will, for lack of a better term. And I'm grateful that I had it when I did during all the years that I was, doing lots of drugs and partying and like living unconsciously and having casual sex. Like, thank God. Thank God I could like not get pregnant while I was moving through those shadow realms of my own life, right? And gosh, had I known what it was doing to my biology back then, oh, I'm grateful that I didn't. But now that I am much more educated on the effects of birth control, I'm like such a powerful advocate for you to get the fuck off of it. Like, I don't care. You need proper sex education. Your partner needs proper sex education. You need to understand that sperm is like actually considered like kind of like a pollution, if you will, inside of your yoni in your womb, which completely messes up the natural pH of your ecosystem. Unless you're trying to get pregnant, you don't need to be being filled with cum.
Mhm.
And like I've been there, so I totally understand, and I don't mean this to like be feeling shameful in any way, because there's no shame at all. We're here like living out our crazy, beautiful human experiences on Earth, and like there's no judgment. And you can heal.
Mhm.
I have healed massively from this, but the point is if you're on hormonal birth control, or if you have even a copper IUD up in your cervix, that's like a dam. And all of that, like birth control affects every single system of your entire body. And it also leaches out vital minerals and nutrients from like deeper inside your body, from your bones and your vital organs that you are then going to suffer from when you're older, right? Like when you're post-menopause, if you don't figure out how to like fix the damage that you did from the years of being on birth control, you're going to suffer in your older years, right? So, like, that's not the answer. The answer is learning how to track your fertility signals, which every single woman should be empowered with that wisdom and education. You should know when you're ovulating. You should be connected to the wisdom of your body enough to know where you're at in your cycle. And men should be much more responsible with their life force. Like when you ejaculate too often, you shorten your life. You're just like completely draining the life force out of you. In Ayurveda, we have a term called ojas. Like too much releasing of your sexual fluids depletes your ojas, which is your main energy reserve. It's what keeps your vitality. It's what gives you energy. It's what keeps your immune system strong. It's what keeps you having vitality for years and years and years. And that just like gets completely drained when we're just like unconsciously spilling our sexual fluids. So it's like the answer is a shift in consciousness and empowerment and education. And it's men need to be empowered with the right education just as much as women. Like expecting women to like basically give themselves chemical castration in order to not bring babies unconsciously into the world is not the answer. We don't need to be bringing a bunch of babies into the world unconsciously, but we also really need to be looking out for our like women's sacred bodies and men's sacred bodies. Like this is an invitation for us all to mature. And I also want to speak to the highly multidimensional nature of the human being and acknowledge the fact that we are animals. We are animals. We have carnal desire. We get horny. Also, like if you're not horny, you're really not that healthy. So we need to have we need to have a vital sex drive. And we need to have enough of our upper chakras online that we're not being slaves to our root and to our lower chakras that just like feel that sexual spark and just want to act. Because that is a part of being human. And it's not something to be like to feel shame about or guilt about. Like we're sexual beings and we're not just animals. We're divine creator, intelligent, incredible beings that are here to evolve be like beyond our natural animal instincts. So it's not about suppressing the lower aspects of ourselves, if you will. It's about embracing them and integrating them and celebrating them and feeling good about like having a sex drive and getting to a level of maturity where your sexual spark doesn't control you. And that requires a serious level of maturity that, like, I don't even think most full-grown adults are at yet. So, like, wherever you're at on your journey, it's totally beautiful and fine and perfect. And if you're on birth control, please get off of it as soon as possible. Get the proper education that you need, and like really embody the belief that you can recover your body from anything.
Hmm. Do you feel that if people are in heterosexual relationships, man and woman, that it is because the question that's coming up for me is like, do I need to educate my partner, or am I like, should I just go look for someone who is already educated in this? I'm like, most women aren't even educated in this, so how can I expect a man to be educated in this? And so it's like, I have to educate myself. And then on top of that, be like, all right, babe, listen, here's the deal, right? Like, is that what you kind of suggest or see happening as as this unfolds?
Um, yeah, so there's a lot of things that are their woman's role naturally. And when it comes to like body wisdom, like reproductive stuff, and especially sex, that actually is the place where women are meant to lead naturally. For instance, like there's no man probably who has ever existed who just naturally knew how to be a good lover by himself. Pretty much every man who has figured that out was taken under the wing by women. Women taught him about pleasure, right? So, yes, it is the woman's role. And I know that, like, as we evolve as a society, there's more like men's work and men's group that's coming up, and there's really incredible, beautiful, divine masculines starting to step up to the plate all over, which is just so amazing to see, who are stepping forward to start educating other men about actually how to show up for their woman in a better way. But and those women, those men learn from their women. So it is the woman's role. And that is a really tricky place to be in because like it's really easy to unintentionally go into like mothering, if you will. And like so there's an art, there's a feminine art, if you will, in inspiring the masculine to be more empowered. And there's a way to go about it. And it's not just, here, you need to be educated on this, read this stuff, do this thing. Like men learn by being inspired, not by being told specifically what to do or specifically what you want. So there's an art to bringing the masculine into it. And as a woman gets more and more embodied into this stuff, if she already has a partner, it's just naturally going to start spilling out of her and include him. And like most men aren't in the position of like carrying that spiritual stick, if you will. Like that's always been the feminine because we have a womb, because we naturally have these shamanic gifts, because we have natural oracular gifts. Like I'm going to paraphrase this, and I don't remember which tribe it came from, but it's like a Native American proverb, if you will, that says something along the lines of a woman's highest calling is to bring a man like close to source, like closer to source, into his like spiritual embodiment, if you will. And it's a man's highest calling to protect a woman as she walks the face of the planet. So it's always been the woman's role to be the carrier of that spiritual wisdom and share it with the community. And we have lost and forgotten the art of how to share it with our feminine radiance that inspires others to want to learn instead of feeling like they're not good enough, or it's like this homework or burden that they have to figure out. It's very much about getting embodied into your feminine radiance and your magic and your power and letting it radiate out of you and sharing from your overflow in a really beautiful, enticing, delicious, playful way that only the feminine knows how to do.
Yeah, I remember after college, I was dating a guy who didn't grow up religious or even really all that spiritual, but in his adulthood started to become very connected with source, mostly through nature. And I remember introducing him to my dad, and I grew up in the church. My dad is the son of a Southern Baptist pastor, and he's very religious. And I remember him telling me that it was the man's role to be the spiritual leader in the home. Um, but because, if I were to pursue a long-term, relationship marriage with this man, that it would then be up to me to be the spiritual leader in the home. And it was like this novel thing that a woman would be the spiritual leader, right? And I'm like, it makes so much more sense that way because like you said, we have wombs and the that is the connection to the spiritual realm. Like we are taking a spirit and creating a human without even our conscious awareness of it, or conscious rather intention. It's like it's just
Mhm.
happening. And so another question that has come up for me is that so I've been off birth control for a long time now, over 10 years. And I could live a life of like taking the first 3 days of my cycle off if I knew when they were coming. And I would say, 8 cycles out of the year, I can pretty much know when they're like I know when like or rather they come when I expect them to. But the others do not. And sometimes I'm on the full moon, sometimes I'm on the new moon, sometimes it, skips between the two, so it's like a cycle and a half or what have you. And then sometimes it's clockwork. So what would you say to somebody who has the flexibility in their schedule to take that time off and spend in ceremony,
Mhm.
but who don't have a consistent cycle?
Yeah, it's a great question. And this is a really good thing to bring into consideration. This is a part of this like leading edge, if you will, of awakening women who feel called to start reclaiming this sacred time for themselves. It's a very real thing for the modern woman because the whole culture is so disconnected from cyclical living. And I just want to say that in times past, it was literally the woman's menstrual cycle that the entire society revolved around. It was the woman's menstrual cycle that kept everyone else in the community really anchored into the cycles of life and of nature. And the society that we're currently in right now is not in tune with the cycles of the female body, let alone the cycles of the cosmos or our planet as a whole. They're all connected, which is why restoring this practice is so key to bringing our entire planet back into alignment, right? So, um, I really appreciate the fact that you have the the Ayurvedic education that you have now because you'll be able to understand my answer to your question much better. And I will say that the only reason that a woman's cycle isn't like clockwork, 100% predictable is because she's not connected to the land and nature and living cyclically anymore. So there's so many different factors that affect the female cycle, which get like it gets so freaking magical when you really start getting into this and you really start paying attention to how a woman's menstrual cycle reacts to the exposure to like different life events and environments, because that wisdom in her cycle is the wisdom of nature. It is the wisdom of like the great cosmic mother womb who birthed everything. And it doesn't lie. So this is when it gets like really magical, when you really start to pay attention to your cycle, because it can really help you see through your own shadow and through your own blind spots and help you make sense of things. Like you might be saying yes to something in your life that you don't even necessarily know that you're a no to, but your cycle will tell you that it's not good for you if you're paying attention enough. So, from an Ayurvedic perspective, your cycle being not predictable is a vata imbalance. And the main reason why the vata dosha is going to be out of balance for pretty much everybody in our society right now is because our society is not living naturally. We're not living by our natural rhythms. There's a reason why we're meant to be cyclical. There's a reason why Mother Earth moves in cycles. There's a reason why the planets operate in cycles. We can't separate ourselves from that. So until humanity, individually or collectively, figures out how to come back into right relationship with the cycles of life, the Vata dosha is going to be out of balance. If you're overriding your body's need for rest, you're going to mess up your Vata dosha. If you're going to work when you're bleeding, you're going to like totally mess up your Vata dosha. If you're working at night, if you're exercising at night, if you're like going to sleep late, if you're eating at different times during the day, like if you're, eating a bunch of crackers and potato chips and popcorn and soda and all the like airy foods that we freaking love, all of that's going to mess with your Vata dosha. And all of that is going to mess with the predictability of your cycle. So, in order to get your cycle back into balance, you've got to get so many different things in your life back into balance, but there are like main things like going to bed late, like being active in the evening time when that's actually when the body is made to be in rest and relaxation and play and community connection, which I know like can be really frustrating if you have a fucking job at night. So I just want to reiterate the fact to like give yourself grace and understand the bigger picture that like we're all waking up out of like being devastatingly asleep for a really long time, and the culture does not support your female body. So, like, just do the best you can and remember that you're resilient as fuck regardless. And just like have your compass pointed in the direction that you want to go. And you don't need to be perfect tomorrow. You don't need to drastically change your schedule tomorrow. And that all that being said, thankfully, I have many years experience of what it actually takes to embody this type of ancient practice in the modern day, and it is not easy. I will just say that right now. Um, but there's some things that you can do. Aside from just tracking your cycle, like bare minimum, just write down when you start bleeding and just keep track of that. So you kind of like have an idea, but also be mindful of all of these things that are going to mess with your cycle. Like at a certain point, you just have to do the best you can. Like even somebody like me who's been embodied in this for a really long time and who is deeply embodied in all this Ayurvedic wisdom and who lives much more in tune with an Ayurvedic lifestyle than most people on the planet. My cycle still isn't like 100% predictable. And sometimes it's an inconvenience, if you will, because, I have other things going on, but you start to get mentally oriented to the phases, if you will. And so like when you start coming close to your bleed, you're like if you start paying attention, your instincts will tell you to stop being more social. Like you'll start feeling more sensitive. It's going to come about in like, you know, emotional outbursts. You might just like start crying or feel really sensitive. Your nervous system might feel fried. You might get really irritated and angry. All of those emotions are trying to tell you to take more time for yourself. And you start living in more of a cyclical way. You start like having a much better understanding and like an embodiment of when your needs are going to shift and how to like just create more space for yourself, if you will. So like do your best to give yourself some time off. And if your bleed comes a little bit earlier, a little bit later than you anticipated, you still take those days that you carved out for yourself and just fucking treat yourself like a goddess. Like give yourself full permission to drop your bundle, if you will, as two of my favorite teachers in this work say. Like menstruation is the ultimate time for you to just fucking drop everything as much as you can. Like I know what this means for the modern woman. It's not that easy, but however much you can, start creating time for yourself. If you can carve out some time for yourself, do it and really prepare yourself for that time. Start preparing weeks ahead. Mentally prepare, shift stuff around in your schedule, like do things ahead of time and push it off until afterwards, and like start just mentally orienting to having this time to hibernate. And
Yeah.
also know that you're so conditioned to be busy all the time, even when you give yourself that space, you're probably not going to drop into it very easily. It's like a lifelong practice. And there's specific tools and different things that I have learned over the years to help a woman really start to slow down and drop in. Because that's the hardest part, even when you have the time. Like your mind is so conditioned to just be doing things all the time. Like it's not easy to rest for the modern human. So there's a lot that you can do to support that, like some of my programs, but I hope that gave you some bit of answer to your question.
Yeah, no, it's perfect. And I love how my Ayurvedic education does support knowing what you're referring to when you're talking about the popcorn and the chips and the sodas and the like airiness. And I'm like, oh yes, I get that. Ironically, and this probably, even as I'm preparing to say this out loud, I can recognize this is like not an excuse, it's a reality right now. But ironically, I'm working at night because I'm taking Ayurveda classes during the day, right? And I'm freshest and most focused during the day. And so that's when I want to be doing my work in the world. That's when I want to be recording podcasts and
Mhm.
going to school and doing my homework and that kind of thing. And I also am very much looking forward to the end of April when class is out of session for the summer and I can adjust my schedule so that I do have an early bedtime. And I'm so excited for that. So excited for that. Angel, you mentioned that you have some programs available, and I'm sure that people are listening to your wisdom right now and they're like, holy fucking shit, I need to work with her. So, how can people work with you and how can people find you in order to, and we'll link anything you reference, we'll link in the show notes and in the description below this video. But yeah, let us know what you offer to the world and how you can help somebody that's listening that wants to work with you.
Thank you for asking. There's a lot of different ways, and I will be birthing so much more this year. Right now, I actually just opened the doors to my new group, Transformational Alchemical Cauldron.
Mm.
It's called Reclaiming the Magic of Your Feminine Radiance. And this is what I birthed to teach all of this. So it is everything that I have learned over the last 11, 12 years of being initiated onto the path of womb shamanism and figuring out how to work shamanically with your bleeds to really come into your power and uncover and discover your own magic, and like also figuring out how to navigate this as a modern woman and all of the challenges. So that is the main thing that I have open right now. I am intending on leaving the doors open throughout this year, bringing women in each month who feel called to join. A lot of it has to do with everything that we covered today. There's a ton more in it. So many different beautiful self-care rituals and practices and therapies. There's lots of my Ayurvedic wisdom infused in it. There's a ton of extremely transformative practices to heal your hormonal system, to heal your womb specifically and your fertility, to heal your yoni physically, energetically, to clear out, trauma and energy from past lovers and help restore the vitality of your creative feminine center, which is what your womb and your yoni are. And yeah, it's a 3-month program right now. There's a community with it also. There's modules, have calls as well. So that's one way. I also offer a temple body reset, which is basically a month-long container where I walk you through a guided Ayurvedic cleanse and equipped you with loads of Ayurvedic self-care and longevity practices and hold you in that space so that you can do a really gentle cleanse while also nourishing and rejuvenating yourself and kind of getting a feel for what this like Ayurvedic lifestyle is about and how to eat in a way that heals your body. I also want to say that your menstrual cycle is a direct reflection of your diet. So, in addition to like all of the other factors and like your emotional stuff and stress and whatever, how clean your diet was the month prior is going to reflect in your current bleed, the bleed that comes. And when my body is at its cleanest, that is when I have the most blissful organic or orgasmic bleeds, is when my body is clean. Also, offer private mentorship. And you can email me directly at honoringthesacredself@gmail.com. You can also follow me on Instagram under womb.shaman, and I am under Angel Aquarian on Facebook. And that is all I have for right now. Oh, and also on YouTube, I'm under Angel Aquarian. And I have my whole summit that I did back in 2020 called Awakening to the Magic of the Menstrual Cycle, which was fabulous. I interviewed 26 different womb workers from all over the world, and there is a ton of incredible, empowering educational information in all of those interviews for anyone who feels inspired to check any of those out. They are available for free on my YouTube channel.
Amazing. And I thought of this question, it just downloaded probably just from being in your presence. But it's a question I've always wanted to be one of those podcasts that asks every guest the same question. And I'm always like, what would my question be? Because I have such a wide variety of guests, but it landed. And the question
Okay.
is, maybe it's on the topics that you talked about today, maybe it's not, but what are 1 to 3 books that you think everyone should read
Mm, Okay, well,
or listen to?
the very first one that comes to mind is called Wild Power, and I will say that my own womb started initiating me onto this path. And I had already been working shamanically with my bleeds for years, actually before I even knew that's what I was doing when I found this book. And it had such a profound effect on my life because in the book, it was putting into words everything that I was like intuitively getting from my body, but had never seen anyone talk about and didn't know how to word myself. This book started explaining a lot of what we talked about today. I had the privilege of interviewing the authors of that book for my summit. Sharni and Alexandra, they're incredible. They are the founders of Red School in the UK, and they are just fabulous, fabulous women. So highly recommend Wild Power for anybody who wants to read more about like the power and magic of your menstrual cycle. I'm just feeling called to offer books on topic because there's so many books that I could recommend for like all humans. But specifically for this, I would also recommend The Fifth Vital Sign. Uh, I can't remember exactly who the author is right now, but there's only one book that is titled that, The Fifth Vital Sign. That goes into educating you more about like the actual effects of birth control on your hormonal system and what that does to like your brain and like learning how to read your overall health by learning how to read the signs of your menstrual cycle. That's a really incredible, empowering book. And then Womb Awakening. That is the Bible on womb shamanism. It is one of the most profound magical books ever written. It's by Ezra and what's his wife? It's actually a couple that wrote it, and I haven't even read half of it. And like, it is so rich and just mind blowing. Like, that book will show you the depth of womb shamanism. Like, basically, most of the sacred sites that like scientists don't know what they're for were for womb shamanism. They were built like to work with these magical powers of the womb, and they're all over the world. Yeah, there's like so many cultures and like ancient things in that book that will just blow your mind if you're really interested in going deeper into like the shamanic aspect of the menstrual cycle and the womb. It's profound. I highly recommend that one. Oh, and one more, Sacred Retreat by Pia Orlean. I also had the privilege of interviewing her on my series. You can check that out too on my YouTube channel. I have a whole library, but I'm going to stop with those four.
Amazing. Well, Angel, thank you so, so much for being here today, for sharing your wisdom with us. Like you said, we could keep going on for hours and hours in many more topics.
Yeah.
But I really appreciate your time today. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for bringing me on. And thank you so much to everyone for tuning in. I am just sending blessings for everyone to heal and reclaim their magic and their power and remember how worthy we all are, and that it is your sacred duty and honor to start choosing yourself more. The whole world needs all of us to start choosing ourselves more.
Mm, yes. Yes, please. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Katie.